There was a brief, beautiful moment in the mid to late 80s when genre filmmakers had just enough budget to be ambitious and just enough freedom to be completely unhinged. Studios were still taking chances on weird ideas. Practical effects teams were pushing the limits of what latex and slime could do, and directors were making films that didn't need to appeal to everyone, just to the devoted few, willing to rent something with a creature on the cover. These weren't blockbusters. They were experiments, passion projects fueled by creativity, low budgets, and a willingness to go too far. Films that blended horror, comedy, and satire without worrying about focus groups or test audiences. They were messy, ambitious, and utterly fearless. This is part one of a celebration of that era. 10 films that prove they really don't make movies like this anymore. Night of the Creeps, 1986. A cold open set in 1959 establishes everything you need to know. Aliens, paranoia, and an experiment gone wrong. When parasitic slugs crash to Earth, they're quickly forgotten, until decades later, when a college prank involving frozen corpses unleashes them on a quiet campus. Suddenly, fraternities, sororities, and student parties become ground zero for a fast-spreading infestation. The story centers on two awkward freshmen trying to reinvent themselves, played with genuine charm by Jason Lively and Steve Marshall. Their accidental heroism is matched by Tom Atkins's hard-drinking detective, a man weighed down by personal tragedy and armed with an endless supply of perfectly delivered one-liners. The tonal balance works because everyone plays their role straight, even as the situation spirals into madness. The slugs themselves are wonderfully gross, squirming, invasive, and deeply uncomfortable to watch as they burrow into their hosts. Zombies explode, bodies convulse, and the effects never shy away from excess. Decker keeps the pace moving, bouncing between laughs, splatter, and surprisingly sincere character moments without losing control. Night of the Creeps is a celebration of horror fandom that never feels smug about it. It understands its influences but isn't trapped by them. Funny, disgusting, and endlessly rewatchable, it's one of the purest expressions of 80s horror comedy enthusiasm. The Stuff, 1985. It starts as a miracle product, a sweet, creamy substance that bubbles up from the ground and becomes an overnight sensation. Marketed aggressively and consumed obsessively, the stuff infiltrates households across America. Only a few people notice the truth. Those who eat it aren't just addicted, they're being hollowed out from the inside. Michael Moriarty plays an industrial saboteur with an oddball confidence that fits the film's off-kilter tone perfectly. Around him, Andrea Marcovici and Paul Sorvino populate a world driven by marketing slogans and corporate indifference. Performances skew strange by design, reflecting a society already primed to accept something harmful, as long as it's profitable. The horror is simple but effective. The white goop moves with unsettling autonomy, erupting from mouths, refrigerators, and walls. Practical effects keep everything tactile and unpleasant, leaning into messiness rather than polish. Larry Cohen stages the chaos with escalating absurdity, building toward a finale that embraces full-scale breakdown. The Stuff is satire first, creature feature second, and that's its strength. It's blunt, funny, and unapologetically weird, using B-movie trappings to land its critique. A scrappy, subversive film that understands exactly how far to push its idea. Critters, 1986. A fiery meteor streaks across the Kansas sky and slams into a quiet farm town. Out tumble the critters, furry, fanged aliens the size of bowling balls, with bottomless appetites and razor-sharp quills. Livestock vanishes first, then people. Grover's Bend is under siege, and no one believes the Brown family when they say it's not coyotes doing the killing. Director Stephen Herrick unleashes a rollicking sci-fi horror comedy, blending genuine scares with irresistible laughs. Dee Wallace and M. Emmett Walsh ground the chaos as the determined mom and skeptical sheriff, while plucky young Scott Grimes steals scenes as Brad, the kid who fights back with slingshots and fireworks. Two bumbling interstellar bounty hunters crash the party, shape-shifting and blasting everything in sight. Practical effects from the Chiodo brothers bring the critters to ferocious life. Rolling spikes, glowing eyes, massive snapping jaws. All puppetry, animatronics, and gleeful mayhem. Barn massacres, church showdowns, midnight chases. The little monsters turn everyday America into a battlefield of bites and explosions. Critters delivers big fun in a small, vicious package, proving that the most memorable movie monsters don't need towering height, just towering attitude. A cult classic that still rolls strong. Re-Animator, 1985. Stuart Gordon's Re-Animator is a wild fusion of splatter horror and pitch-black comedy, loosely adapted from H.P. Lovecraft's Herbert West, Re-Animator. It tells the story of Herbert West, a brilliant but unhinged medical student who develops a glowing green serum capable of bringing the dead back to life. What begins as scientific ambition quickly spirals into chaos, gore, and madness. Jeffrey Combs steals the film as West, playing him with manic intensity and deadpan arrogance. His obsession with conquering death turns him into both the film's hero and its villain, a man as dangerous as the creatures he creates. Bruce Abbott provides the straight man as Dan Kane, the fellow student reluctantly drawn into West's experiments, while Barbara Crampton adds both humanity and vulnerability as Dan's girlfriend, Megan. What makes Re-Animator unforgettable is its audacity. The film doesn't just push boundaries, it smashes through them with gallons of blood and outrageous set pieces. From severed heads with a mind of their own to morgue corpses exploding into grotesque violence, Gordon leans into practical effects that are both shocking and darkly hilarious. Composer Richard Band's tongue-in-cheek score, riffing on Bernard Herrmann's Psycho theme, sets the perfect tone for the madness. Beneath the over-the-top gore lies a clever streak of satire. Re-Animator pokes fun at the arrogance of science, the institutions that enable it, and the fragile line between genius and insanity. It's messy, outrageous, and utterly fearless, a midnight movie classic that embodies the wild, anything-goes energy of 1980s horror. Society, 1989. A teenager growing up among Beverly Hills wealth begins to feel out of place in his own life. Conversations feel rehearsed, smiles linger too long, and everyone seems invested in pulling him deeper into their world. His growing paranoia isn't just adolescent anxiety, it's a warning. Billy Warlock grounds the film with an anxious, searching performance that keeps the early sections restrained. The people around him behave just slightly wrong, creating a persistent sense of unease. Brian Usna lets the discomfort simmer, trusting atmosphere and implication long before revealing the full scope of the horror. When the truth finally surfaces, the film detonates. Screaming Mad George's effects turn bodies into malleable nightmares, merging, folding, and consuming one another in a grotesque spectacle. The infamous sequence is overwhelming by design, pushing practical effects into territory few films dared explore. Society is blunt in its metaphor and fearless in execution. It uses body horror to literalize class exploitation, stripping away any subtlety in favor of impact. Strange, confrontational, and unforgettable, it remains one of the most audacious cult films of its era. TerrorVision, 1986. TerrorVision is a horror comedy film released in 1986, directed by Ted Nicolau. The plot revolves around the Putterman family, who install a new satellite television system that inadvertently receives signals from outer space. This leads to the unintended consequence of an alien monster being transported into their home. As the monster begins to wreak havoc, the film blends slapstick humor with horror elements, creating a unique and campy viewing experience. Notable performances include Diane Franklin as Susie, Garrett Graham as Stan, and Mary Woronov as Raquel, who bring a delightful absurdity to their roles. The film is characterized by its colorful set design, quirky characters, and a distinctive visual style that reflects the 1980s aesthetic. It also features a playful critique of suburban life and media consumption, echoing themes from other cult classics of the era. TerrorVision runs for 85 minutes and has garnered a cult following, currently holding an IMDb rating of 5.5. While it may not have been a commercial success upon release, it has since become a beloved film among fans of B-movie horror and comedy. The film showcases a mix of outrageous special effects and comedic moments, making it a fun watch for those who appreciate campy horror. With its bizarre premise and eccentric characters, TerrorVision remains a memorable entry in the genre, celebrated for its creativity and humor. From Beyond, 1986. From Beyond is Stuart Gordon and Brian Usna pushing Lovecraftian horror to extremes. Jeffrey Combs returns, but this time as a man consumed by the Resonator, a machine that awakens unseen dimensions and grotesque entities just beyond human perception. Barbara Crampton anchors the narrative with intelligence and emotional depth, her character a psychiatrist whose curiosity and desire blur ethical lines. The creature design is outrageously imaginative. Slime-coated appendages, pulsating forms, and impossible anatomies suggest entire unseen ecosystems overlapping our world. Gordon's camera work mirrors the character's altered perceptions, with bold colors, kinetic framing, and surreal set pieces that heighten disorientation. Themes of obsession, addiction, and psychosexual tension intensify as the film progresses, culminating in a finale where transformations, creatures, and chaos collide. From Beyond is uncompromising and audacious, a film that earned its cult following by daring to challenge boundaries, blending visceral horror, psychological depth, and technical ingenuity in a way that remains striking even decades later. The Hidden, 1987. Los Angeles is hit by a wave of inexplicable violence. Ordinary people suddenly commit extreme crimes with no regard for survival, ending in explosive shootouts and apparent suicides. An FBI agent arrives claiming to recognize the pattern, though he offers few explanations. The truth is stranger than anyone expects. Kyle MacLachlan's performance is key to the film's slow-burn reveal. His stiff mannerisms and emotional detachment feel off in a way that gradually becomes purposeful. Michael Nouri plays the grounded detective counterpart, reacting with skepticism that mirrors the audience's own disbelief. Their evolving partnership gives the film its emotional anchor. Action scenes are staged with confidence. Car chases, gunfights, and physical confrontations grounded in practical stunt work. The alien parasite itself is kept mostly hidden, glimpsed just enough to remain unsettling. Violence is sudden and excessive, emphasizing the creature's thrill-seeking nature and disregard for human limits. The Hidden succeeds by refusing to wink at the audience. It treats its premise seriously, letting the absurdity emerge organically. Fast-paced, clever, and surprisingly emotional, it's one of the strongest genre hybrids of the late 80s. The Return of the Living Dead, 1985. Two warehouse workers accidentally release toxic gas from a military canister, resurrecting a cadaver, and unleashing a zombie outbreak on the outskirts of Louisville. These aren't slow shamblers. They're fast, intelligent, nearly indestructible, and crave human brains. As the infection spreads through a nearby cemetery during a punk party, the military covers up their role, while the zombies adapt, communicate, and hunt with terrifying efficiency. Dan O'Bannon wrote and directed a horror comedy masterpiece, blending genuine scares with pitch-black humor. Clu Gulager and James Karen play the warehouse workers, whose mistake sets everything in motion, while Linnea Quigley became a scream queen icon. The punk aesthetic, leather, mohawks, and nihilistic attitude gives the film its distinctive visual identity and fits perfectly with the apocalyptic chaos. Practical effects by William Munns and team elevate the film, from the fluid skeletal tarman to melting toxic rain-infected zombies. Half-woman corpses deliver darkly comic dialogue, while makeup effects emphasize decay and grotesque skeletal features. The Return of the Living Dead left a lasting mark on zombie cinema, popularizing brains as zombie speech, establishing running zombies, and proving horror comedy could be both funny and frightening, all set to a punk soundtrack that became iconic. Brain Damage, 1988. On the grimy streets of late 80s New York, A young man named Brian wakes up one morning with a problem he never expected. A parasite has taken up residence in his body. Not just any parasite, but Elmer, a sleek, leech-like creature with a sly voice and a hunger for brains. In exchange for feeding it fresh victims, Elmer rewards Brian with euphoric, hallucinatory trips that quickly spiral into addiction. What makes Brain Damage unforgettable is its brazen mix of street-level grit, psychedelic imagery, and grotesque body horror. Director Frank Henenlotter, known for Basket Case, takes things further here, blending the seediness of the city with mind-bending visuals. Brian's drug-like highs are shown in kaleidoscopic bursts of color, while his lows leave him writhing in withdrawal. A clear, if twisted, commentary on the era's battles with addiction. The kills are as outrageous as they are unsettling. Victims are lured in by Brian's haze of dependence, only to fall prey to Elmer's grotesque feeding. The infamous brain-draining sequences are a showcase of practical effects, managing to be equal parts disturbing and darkly funny. One sequence in a nightclub bathroom still shocks decades later, cementing the film's cult reputation. Yet beneath the sleaze and slime, Brain Damage has something to say. It's a parable of control, temptation, and the ruinous pull of dependency. Elmer isn't just a monster, he's the voice of temptation itself, cool and persuasive, whispering promises that can't possibly be kept. Henenlotter's film walks the line between exploitation and art, coding sharp social critique in neon blood and absurd humor. For fans of VHS-era cult horror, Brain Damage is a trip worth taking, though it's one you'll be glad you can walk away from. If you love discovering forgotten horror and cult cinema, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the films time forgot. Thanks for watching, and remember, always be kind and rewind, because every movie is someone's favorite.